Pokemon Champions is set to change Pokemon forever, but so far we got more questions than answers. In this video, we will explore what we can learn from the first trailer, speculation that has partially popped up the past week because of the new regional information that dropped, possibilities for how they might monetize the game, which is something I don't see that many people talk about, and finally my personal hopes for what the game could bring to Pokemon. In the first 40 seconds of the trailer, we get the classic Pokemon move, where they show the games being played throughout the ages on the various consoles. It's always a fun nostalgia trip to see all of these consoles and older games, but as far as I can tell, I don't see anything we can learn here unless there's some Easter egg that they dropped that I didn't catch. If you saw one, let me know in the comments down below. But then we finally get the big reveal. The final evolution of Pokemon battling is this person playing on their phone, telling us, yes, you'll now be able to actually battle on your phone in the original Pokemon battle style. And in the very first frame of Champions footage, we can already see Dondozo facing off versus Charizard and Hisui and Samurott. As the camera travels into the screen, we then also see an Aegislash next to Dondozo. So right here, we already got tons of information. First of all, Champions will allow us to play double battles, which is the official way to play competitive Pokemon. And we can try to draw some conclusions from this, but more on that later. I promise this is spicy. And second, the Pokédex is going to be different from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as Aegislash is currently not available in these games. Then Dondozo seemingly starts the animation for the move Wave Crash, and this gets interrupted by an animation showing the information being transferred worldwide. This tells us the game is allowing us to battle across the globe, whether that's some kind of ranked online ladder or maybe even online tournaments like the Global Challenge. That part isn't entirely clear, but they did confirm during that Pokemon Day stream that yes, you can play online. We then get teleported into the game, and notice how the arena is actually very, very large. It almost reminds me of the large arenas from Pokemon Sword and Shield. You know Sword and Shield, where you had Dynamax battles? But again, let's keep the speculation for later. Next up, Charizard Mega Evolves, and this is kind of one of the bigger reveals, as it means we get to play competitive Pokemon VGC with current Pokemon like Dondozo, but with the older Mega Evolution mechanic as well at the same time. An important side note here is that the Pokemon trading card game is currently also getting all kinds of Mega Evolution based set announcements, and Pokemon Legends ZA will also include Mega Evolutions. So with the 30th anniversary of the franchise coming next year, it seems we're going deep into the nostalgia and the Megas. The absolute bombshell though is that right after this Mega Charizard, Dondozo terastallizes. Terastallization being the competitive mechanic of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, we can see there's going to be two different competitive mechanics from different eras available at the exact same time. And like I mentioned earlier, the stadium looks pretty big. Sword and Shield big. So many are speculating we could see all the gimmicks available at some point. The trailer then ends with Charizard and Dondozo attacking each other, and we get the crucial information: Pokemon Champions in development for iOS, Android, and Nintendo Switch. Now before we go crazy with the speculation and the hopes and so forth, there was a little more information given outside of the trailer. First, Pokemon Champions will connect to Pokemon Home. And importantly, the presentation also confirmed that not only can we connect, but we can actually send Pokemon from our mainline games or go to Champions. Second, not all Pokemon will be available upon release of the game. This means the game will launch with a limited Pokédex, but then potentially it could expand as time goes on. So with that information out of the way, it looks like Pokemon Champions could be like a Pokemon Stadium, maybe even a simulator type of Pokemon Showdown, but that actually looks really good and that is official. There's a lot of hopes and dreams going on right about now. The reason so many players are excited for this is because the barrier to entry for competitive Pokemon is currently pretty high. You need to buy a Nintendo Switch, you need to buy the latest game, you need to buy the latest DLC, then you find out, oh damn, this super broken Pokemon is actually in another game, and then I need to buy the DLC for that other game as well. So then you finish that other storyline after having already completed the first game storyline, storyline, and then you realize, oh damn, now that I finally completed the DLC storyline, I catch this Pokemon, and it turns out I need different IVs for this Pokemon. You didn't know what that was at first, so you've wasted a bunch of time, and now you need like a 0 speed IV or a 0 attack IV. You need to do it all over again. It's a lot for people who are newer to it. Things have improved a lot compared to back in the day. You don't need to breed for specific moves. You don't need to go and buy Colosseum to get a specific Magmar that learns a specific move. A lot of quality of life changes have happened over the years, but it's still a lot for quite some people. A proper simulator that just focuses on battling and nothing else would be a great way to get new players excited about competitive Pokemon, and that's what many people are hoping Pokemon Champions will end up being. And because it's a game focused on battling rather than the story, and it's going to be an online client, there's also possibilities for consistent updates. Consider games like Hearthstone, League of Legends, Overwatch. Whether you think these games are run well or not isn't really relevant, but it's irrefutable that these consistent updates can keep games fresh when done well. And it's very, very different from just a little bug patch once in a while like we're getting for Scarlet and Violet. This is another reason many people are expecting all the battle gimmicks to return. Perhaps they won't all be available at once, but it's very possible we first get a season or two of Mega Evolutions with Terastallization, to then get a season with Dynamax, to then get a season with Z-moves, and then perhaps a season, or rather a side fun mode of absolute chaos with all of them combined. If something breaks in the meta, you can have a really quick nerf, just like other online games get. The possibilities are endless. And rather than being gated behind a console not everyone owns, 12 hours of story and 30 hours of YouTube research, it would now be right there on everybody's phone. We could get a competitive Pokemon hype at heights never seen before. But that's not all, because there's another big speculation that this could replace the mainline games for the competitive format, which are currently Scarlet and Violet, for the in-person competitive events. If you don't know, every few weeks there's a regional Pokemon tournament somewhere in the world where thousands of players compete in various versions of Pokemon to try and qualify for the World Championships. There's a trading card game, Pokemon Go, soon Pokemon Unite, and of course the Pokemon video games. While Scarlet and Violet are cool, there's still things to be desired, and some players are essentially hoping that Pokemon Champions could be the new platform for these events as well. Arguably the best competitive Pokemon player of all time, Wolf, speculated in his Champions video that this could even mean that the mainline games no longer need to be balanced around the VGC metagame, which could lead to even more single-player improvements in the next generation. I assume you've seen that video already, but if you haven't yet, be sure to check it out after this video. No, after this video. I know he's very handsome, but please, help out the little guy here. You know, speaking of helping out the little guy, you know, click subscribe, maybe, please, thank you. Anyway, so if the competitive circuit migrates to Champions, this means the mainline games could improve in other ways. Now, I don't want to create too much hype here because there's other prominent players who disagree. They argue Champions will never become the main tournament platform, with Twitter user Wiltank saying, "I will literally post a video of me eating part of a shoe if it were to happen." Personally, I'm stoked for this shoe eating video, so I'm Team Champions right now. Their argument goes that the Pokemon Company wants us to keep buying the mainline games, and while I get that, I think virtually all of us would buy the mainline games anyway, especially since the home compatibility means we probably want to catch the mons in-game and then transfer them to Champions whenever possible. It's also just really cool to be able to use your Pokemon that have been with you for like a long time. Maybe you have your favorite shiny in a really cool ball. Maybe you've got this super rare mark with like a cool title. That's the type of stuff you really get from owning the mainline games and playing them and transferring them and so forth. At least I would think those things migrate if you sent a Pokemon over, and so I think people would still buy the mainline games anyway. But if we're able to simply transfer Pokemon from our other games to Champions, that brings us to the biggest question. How is Champions going to be monetized? After all, everyone is hoping this game will essentially be a reskinned Pokemon Showdown, where we can just click the perfect Pokemon with perfect EVs, manual IV setting, getting the best moves with one mouse press, and that just makes me wonder, how would they get any money out of something like this? Many players are hoping the monetization will come purely from cosmetics, and while I would love that, I kind of fear that won't be the case. I've almost never seen a company that generous. My best guess is that making optimal Pokemon is going to cost some kind of resource, which at first you get just enough of to make maybe 1 or 2 teams by finishing some kind of campaign or a tutorial, you know, that kind of deal. But then in mobile gacha game fashion, that resource would gradually run dry. And that's when you'll be asked to spend money or maybe do some kind of slow grind, you know, maybe a daily quest kind of system where after a week or 2 you have enough of a resource to make another team, something like that, you know, I'm just grasping at straws here. This is where owning the mainline games with home compatibility would then help you, as it would allow you to transfer most mons just like that, and then when you need a Pokemon with a very specific IV layout, like 0 attack, 0 speed Lunala, you'd then spend the rarer resource within champions. But that would allow you to mostly circumvent the monetization system, which I don't think they want us doing either. So perhaps setting IVs to 0 is something that ends up costing a resource. You know, we've all been talking about, oh, the rusted bottle cap, that would be a really cool thing, maybe next gen, maybe this or that. Well, maybe it's just a thing in Champions that, you know, costs a resource and you'll only have so much of it and you'll get it very slowly. And maybe if you want to be able to do that kind of thing, that might be where we see monetization happen. We would probably get this item like rarely for free, and then if you want to go crazy, you know, spend the big bucks. Again though, this is all speculation. Another option is for parts of the decks to be unlockable with a resource. Consider the way gacha games make you roll for banners to then get access to certain characters. It's very possible that you can only transfer Pokemon from home to Champions if you've unlocked that part of the Pokédex in Champions, and that part is only unlockable through long quest grinds or money. This would also then allow them to continuously monetize the game as more Pokemon are added to the decks over time. Don't get me wrong, this is not a future I'm hoping for, you know, I'm just thinking, damn, this is a company that still wants to make money. And so I just don't want to create these super hyped, perfect expectations where we're then let down because not everything is free. Most games, especially mobile ones, just aren't that generous generally. They still want to make money, and just cosmetics is rarely the way they go about it. I guess our one big positive hope though is that Pokemon generally has been known to be generous-ish in their mobile games. Apparently Pokemon Pocket, for example, can be quite free-to-play friendly. Tons of friends of mine who play the game are free-to-play and are able to build meta-relevant decks to grind the ladder without spending any money. If this is an indication of the Pokemon Company's generosity, or perhaps more realistically a sort of design philosophy where they would rather sacrifice a little money up front to then have a way more long-term legacy of just intense brand loyalty and a larger franchise, I'd be on board for that. They might be going for that. That'd be incredible. Only time can tell though. Speaking of time and its ability to tell, with the announcement of the coming regional tournament locations, a bunch of players started speculating that Pokemon Champions may release sooner than we thought. They're arguing that the branding is extremely Mega Evolution themed. With Pokemon Go having Mega Evolutions and the TCG getting Mega Evolutions, it'd be super weird if VGC didn't. But Scarlet and Violet don't have Mega Evolutions. And the Legend series seemingly doesn't support regular battles. So the only way to get Mega Evolutions into our video game circuit would be a Pokemon Champions release right after Worlds in August, just in time for the first regionals. I personally think this is unlikely, because that would be an extremely limited time to learn the ins and outs of a new game and swap tournament infrastructure to the new game, never mind the potential for bugs. And finally, the game was only teased for the first time a few months ago. The timeline just feels too fast for this to be the case. I personally think the Mega Evolution branding is just used because Go has it, TCG is getting it, Legend CA are going ham on Megas, the 30th anniversary will likely be a bomb of nostalgia and does also feature plenty of Megas, and so VGC will just have to wait a little bit. I did speculate before that CA may lead to a Scarlet and Violet patch where we perhaps get Xerneas and Yveltal, and perhaps they could bring Megas over that way, kind of like a soft DLC. This could then bring a new fresh regulation, different from our current competitive regulation I, but that's something they've never done before, so that'd be a very, very odd first. My Hopium Copium speculation is actually an early December release. If we assume Champions ends up being used for the competitive circuit, with today's available regional info, the only prolonged period of no major tournaments is from November 30 to January 24th. If we see an early December release, that could be the moment to launch, get everyone accustomed to the interface, give staff time to brush up on everything, and perhaps have our January regulation be in the Champions format. If I let my brain speak for a moment though, and it's very rare that I let it, I still find this quite early, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually gonna be a later 2026 release. Finally, I wanted to talk about my hopes for the game. Obviously, like almost everyone, I'm hoping this becomes the main competitive platform of the video game championships, and of course I want it to be as cheap as possible. But beyond that, I'm more so incredibly stoked for how this could impact the Pokemon video game's place in game culture as a whole. My very first Pokemon game was Pokemon Ruby, and I've played every generation since, but I only recently started playing competitively. I've gone to 3 major events now, and at the last one, I got to face the 2023 World Champion Shohei Kimura and Regional Champion Brady Smith. I of course got destroyed by these legends of the game, but I did end 5-3 still. And it's just been so amazing learning how to play this game as a complete scrub, because as you get better, the things you learn actually matter. I know this may sound silly, but the improvement as a player you feel when playing competitive Pokemon is unlike anything I can compare it to. It's really magical. And so my hope would be that even more people get to enjoy that. It's really hard to get people to try VGC right now because there's just this mountain of buy Switch, buy game, clear story, bottle cap, farm TMs, EV train, and so forth to climb, and it's a hard sell for someone who's not in love with the game just yet. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I hope Pokemon Champions could capture this moment in pop culture, or maybe less ambitiously video game culture, where just hundreds of thousands of new players get to experience the joy of Pokemon VGC. Because I truly believe this game is so incredible, the last little hurdle is just that little accessibility demon going, hey, maybe don't give a shot, maybe you don't have enough time. If we can just crush that demon, I think so many people would actually give this game a shot and fall in love just as I have. But what do you think? What are your hopes for the game? When do you imagine Pokemon Champions will be released? And how do you think they'll monetize it? Let me know in the comments down below. Ciao.